Yo, welcome to Six Slayers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike, the Six Slayer, chilling with Mark, the honorable villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? Our next guest is a great writer. He's a great talent. He's an all-around great guy. He's been killing it at DC. Let him know who we got.
Joining us today, we got my homeboy, Jeremy Adams, joining us. But before we chop it up with Jeremy, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right, our next guest is the writer of Green Lantern and Flash Gordon. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Land, we bring to you the one and only Jeremy Adams. What up, man?
Good to be back. Good to be back.
Man, I'm glad to have you back, man. Super excited to have you on. We're going to just dive right on in. All right, so Jeremy, the last time you were on the show, Green Lantern 1 wasn't even released yet.
Crazy.
In fact, you just had announced like earlier the day, okay, that day, that you will be stepping down from the Flash. It was you made that announcement, and then boom, we had a interview with you. It was awesome. But tell us, Jeremy, what was the transition like going from the Flash to Green Lantern 1 year later?
Listen, the transition obviously when they told me I was going to be leaving the Flash, I was heartbroken. And, it was Jeff Johns that kind of bolstered me up when I told them they wanted me to do Green Lantern. But, it was so much pressure. I don't know what it was about Green Lantern that just felt like so much more pressure. I don't know if it was just all the mythology or what. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot. And I had a pitch that I had pitched a while ago during the 5G days. And I kind of nipped and tucked that so that it would kind of fit into current continuity. But it was hard up front because it was definitely like, hey, it's Earthbound and we're going to find out about Hal. And I had to kind of really dial in what I thought the voice for Hal was going to be and the stuff with Carol, and then hinting at this other thing happening in space. So a year out, it's like, if you're reading the book now, you know how absolutely chaotic it is. It's it's like do, and now it's like explosion third act time as we kind of end the United Planets story and get ready for the new year where it'll be kind of a new launching point for the book. And they announced Green Lantern 4 that I'm doing with Morgan Hampton. So we're those stories are going to be concurrent. There's going to be a lot of what happens in Green Lantern, and more specific, there's a special called Green Lantern Fractal Spectrum that's coming out, and that's going to basically set the stage for what's going to happen in Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps going forward. I don't know if I answered your question, bro.
No, you did, and you answered my second question, because I was going to ask you, were you planning on writing Green Lantern with Green Lantern Corps in 2025? And it seems like they're going to be concurrent titles, right?
Yeah, what's so funny is, they are, and they had come to me about Green Lantern Corps. I had given my thoughts. I didn't think I was going to be writing it, and they just asked me to write it with Morgan, who I really like. And it's a weird thing, because even when I was on the Flash, my goal with the Flash, and I was always very open about this, is like get it to a place where there could be more Flash titles, because I felt like the marketplace could withhold that. And it was gratifying, because after 1 Minute War and after my run, it was like, there was Flash, there was Speed Force, there was the Jay Garrick stuff that I did, and it just felt like, oh, there's more room for that. And I felt that with Green Lantern. You could feel it. You could be like, oh, there's not enough. There needs to be more to explore here for Green Lantern. So being able to do those two books is great. And I think, especially Morgan and I have talked about it. I want Green Lantern to be the place. Like, if you want to know about what's going on in the universe of DC, like, come to Green Lantern. Like, it's not just going to be Green Lantern. There's going to be space caps. There's going to be, crazy aliens and villains that are all space centric. Because to me, if you're the Green Lantern Corps and you're like the sheriffs of space, that seems most appropriate. If we're going to deal with the fallout of Thanagar that happened in Green Lantern, and touch on stuff that's going on in Ran, we've got probably higher aspirations than we can actually execute on. But my point is, like, I made a giant list, like, these are all the characters that are in space, let's use them all if we can,
You have Mark at Space Cabbie, man. I think we interviewed Mark Wade earlier this year. He was like, "Hey, man, you plans for Space Cabbie?"
I'm just saying, like, yeah, there's a lot of those characters, dude. And it's like, and Wade's got all those characters on Earth, the stuff on Earth, and I'm like, fine, I'll take all the toys in space. You know?
All right, I gotta ask this question, man. I mean, it seems like Sector 2814 has like the whole universe worth of lanterns all in one planet. Okay, why is 2814 so damn crowded with lanterns?
So I explored that in Green Lantern, and basically the way I set it up was, because I'm the same way. Basically the way I started it out in my head was like, 2814 is a problem child. Like 2814 is the bad neighborhood that you need more cops patrolling. That's where every crisis is going to show up or end. And in my mind, it was also about the Guardians. And what I said was, the Guardians, you know, they put a central power battery in Earth to be guarded by the Green that could kind of like cover its presence until it was activated when something happened to them and something happened to Oa. But the point that I think Tom Calamaco makes is like, hey, the Guardians knew that Earthers are like the cockroaches of the universe. Like if a nuclear attack happened, they're still going to be around. Like they kind of stack the deck. They like know that they're not going to go along to get along. They're going to be a little more resistant to change and authority. So it's a good safety measure. So I've always said that they've kind of started planting these lanterns as a safeguard against something else that happens. And so that's my rationale. So
that's a great one, man.
That happens, it's like, at least we got these weirdos, these ape people over here on Earth that have enough tenacity and enough willpower that they can kind of take up the torch and lead the battle against whatever it was. And you know, my mind is the Guardians were right. You know, the United Planets have got this source lantern and they've kind of used it for their nefarious purposes. And sure enough, Hal, this battery with John, and now they started getting rings to other people like Guy and Joe, and they're taking the fight to the bad guys.
Awesome.
Jeremy, on the Green Lantern title, you've been working with Xermanico.
Yeah.
What's the collaboration process like working with him?
Begging him never to leave me. That's generally... the guy's unbelievable. You know, the first time I ever worked with him, first time I ever saw his art was when we did Flashpoint Beyond. And,
insane.
Yeah, Tim Sheridan, Jeff, and I were just kind of looking at each other like, this guy's nuts. Like, he's so good. It's not just that he's good; it's that he's such an artist that I will call out panels, right, and he will make that into its own piece of art, which is really remarkable. But he can draw people's faces, so there's so much acting, and then he can pull back and make this kind of like cinematic vibe to it. And when we were doing Earthbound stuff, which was super cool anyways, I was constantly like, hey, what do you want to do? Like I'm always constantly asking him, like, what is it you want to do? What do you want to draw? And he's like, I want a giant mech. I'm like, you get a giant mech. Jets. It's like, you get jets, bro. Like, you know, we put the town he lives in as the entrance to the giant central power battery, and I'm always about how can I keep him happy, because what's crazy is like he did all the Earth stuff's amazing, and then the minute we went to space, I was like, oh my gosh, this is even better. I'm such an idiot for keeping him on Earth, you know. So now I asked him the other day. I said, what do you want to do? What's exciting to you? And he's like, you've already done more than I thought, you know. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, give me something. And now, to me, selfishly, I know how good he draws, so I'm starting to bring in characters that I want to bring in that maybe aren't like, maybe I won't even say they're Green Lantern adjacent. They're just like, I just want to see what he does, you know? And so I'm like having a great time to be like, you know, and I'll get like, my editor will be like, what does this have to do with Green Lantern? I'm like, oh, you know, nothing. But like, I also want to see Xermanico do it because he's incredible, you know? And I try, and I do that all the time. Like if I can use other characters from other things that no one's using, I like to dip into the toy box, because I think it gives a feeling of cohesiveness to the universe. Like if
right.
It's just Green Lantern and there's nothing else by Green Lantern, then it doesn't feel like it's part of the DC universe. But like I said, if Space Cabbie shows up, or the Omega Man, or whatever, or Dr. Fate, or the JSA, or whatever, then you're like, oh, this is part of a superhero universe,
That's awesome.
Let's talk about another one of your titles.
Yeah.
Tell me this: is Flash Gordon your first non-DC book?
Yes, technically. I did do some digital Marvel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was on the Marvel Unlimited, which was really fun and silly. But yes, it is my first book outside of DC, actual paper book.
Is there a difference how Mad Cave operates compared to DC?
Yeah, I mean, especially because it's an IP that is owned by a company called King Features. I mean, to a degree, they leave me alone in a lot of ways. Minor suggestion stuff, and it's very freeing in that regard. And because it's Flash Gordon, and I think that there's like a knowledge of Flash Gordon, but there's not. Everybody hangs their hat on the '80s movie, and that's kind of it. The big fans know about the old comic strips and stuff like that. For me, it's just a chance to write a book that I can just kind of almost stream of consciousness, just like write crazy sci-fi ideas and have fun and make it action-packed. And there's not a lot of pushback. There's not a lot of like, well, you can't do that in continuity, because there's not really a continuity. And so that's been wonderful. It definitely is more relaxing than, I would say, doing Green Lantern or even upcoming Aquaman. There's a certain amount of like, I've had this happen to me a couple times in Green Lantern, where I've asked permission to use a character. I've been told, yes, you can do that. And then I use the character, and then I'm told, oops, no, you can't. And I'm like, so I try to pivot with that. And I've had some success. Like upcoming in the Green Lantern book, there's a character named Odyssey that I created. And that came from the fact that I wanted to use Wonder Girl, and I was told I could use Wonder Girl, and I turned in the script, and then they're like, "Oh, you can't use Wonder Girl." I'm like, So then it's like, okay, but what can I do? How can I make this, turn this to my advantage? And well, maybe I can make my own character. Like I looked through characters that previously existed, and there were a lot of characters that are already in use. All of us have the same Who's Who guide, so we're just like, well, maybe that, So then I was like, well, I'll just have to come up with something else. I think the reason a lot of times I come up with characters, like new characters, are mostly so I can avoid getting in trouble with another person. Like I don't want anybody mad at me. If they don't want me to use that thing, then it's like, okay, I totally understand. There are also like, I'll get like, hey, we want to spice this up. Can you put in this character? And I'm like, okay. And then, but just saying, hey, put in this character means I got to make it make sense, or I got to add a piece of it to try to make it make sense. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. So I'm learning that part about being in comic books, because I haven't been in it that long. It's just because it's a continuous universe, I'm trying to play in those sandboxes without stepping on toes. If I was Tom King, dang it, I would just step on your toes and just.
I love that. Jeremy, let's talk more about Flash Gordon. It was announced that you're working on a second story arc. What kind of research goes into an iconic character like Flash Gordon?
My mentor Jim Creed gave me like I have them all here. They're like all the old comic strips that I would read. And then I love the 80s movies, so I would kind of watch that. I'm diving into wikis, I've got some books. I'm just trying to figure out, there's no particularly one continuity. It's kind of a grab bag. And with the way that I ended issue 0, I do this a lot, is like sometimes the mythology is so big, I have to blow it up so that I can kind of start over in a way that makes sense for me, or at least that I don't get in too much trouble. I do it with Green Lantern. It was like, that mythology was so massive. I was like, well, I'm just going to blow up all the central power batteries so I don't have to deal with it. And then with Flash Gordon, with Mongo, there was actually a note that came down. They didn't want me to use the word Mongo. They thought it was, I don't know. And I was like, fine, I'm blowing it up. I'm not going to police myself for like a year not using the word Mongo. So I'm like, it's done. And I detonated it. And it ended up being like a really cool pivot where it changed the entire dynamic of the story, where I was like, oh, that would be interesting if Flash is the reason, he didn't save every one of us. He may have saved Earth, but he sure didn't save Mongo, and then it's like putting those pieces back together and trying to figure out where everybody is in the universe and get to re-explore those characters, but not have the heaviness of the continuity or some of the older stuff, because I try really hard to make sure I do my due diligence and that I tried it. I mean, shoot, in DC, they've had so many continuity changes. I'm always trying to hammer it all into one, so that, because I'm a nerd, that's all there is to it. It's like, I want this all to make sense. With Flash Gordon, it's weird because I'm trying to introduce elements that have been around for 50 years to people that have never heard of them. Like, King Voltan and the Hawkmen, you're going to be like, they could have been on Thanagar. It's like, yeah, where did you think Thanagar came from? Like, people have been ripping off Flash Gordon for years. I shouldn't say rip, more like, I mean, it's like homages. It's like,
right.
Star Wars, it's like, yeah, I ripped off Star Wars too. I still do. So yeah, there's not one continuity. I'm just trying to take the best stuff, but I don't have because I've blown it up, I don't have the obligation to be like, well, you got to remember this thing that happened a long time ago, because Flash Gordon's been done and redone a billion times.
Right. I know you're a big comic art fan as well. Yeah. It's been a year since you've been on, Jeremy. I know you love getting those emails or artwork from your scripts. So yes. What page over the last year just absolutely blew your mind because it was almost telepathic? It was like, there it is right there.
Oh my gosh. That is so tough. That's a great question. Because usually what happens Xermanico is always doing more than I think. The minute, like I mentioned before, the minute that Hal got to space, and I do this it was basically Hal's in space, he looks at Earth, and then he gets in like a warp drives out of there, and he gets pulled out into the space battle. And I remember Xermanico sending me that, and I'm like, like I said, I was like, I'm such an idiot to keep him on Earth. This was the stupidest thing I've ever done, because like his art was so good. And then Fernando Pasarin, obviously I did a ton of stuff with him in Flash, but he has this bizarre ability to do exactly what I write, but better, like 100%. It's like, yes, that's exactly, I want to say that's exactly what I thought, but it's like way better than I thought. But it's exactly like, it's the framing and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was thinking, except he pluses it by the nth degree, and he's really funny too. So if I put something funny in, he gets humor, and he can do the humor stuff really, really well. But yeah, I would say that there's been, I've been on the Fractal Lanterns. VKen is the artist on that, and it's like, that's a totally different style of art that I really, really dig. It has kind of an anime or like a manga flair to it, and it feels, I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels like a lot of stuff I read in the 90s and stuff. And it's very dynamic, very kinetic. And I'm really excited about that one because it came out way better than I even imagined. I'm also, Lucas Meyer and, Travis Mercer, we've been doing a World's Finest thing, and their art's just phenomenal too. It's an embarrassment of riches working with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm incredibly lucky. And I know it. So
I got a follow-up question. How frequent do you get emails with art?
All the time. Now at this stage, all the time. Will is interesting because I love his art on Flash Gordon, but I'm not in that. For whatever reason, I'll get like batches. It'll be like, he's inked them too, so it'll be like, here's a batch, and I'll be like, holy cow, this is incredible. With the Green Lantern stuff, I'll usually get per page. So, I'm running these guys ragged. And then John Timms on Aquaman is just killing it. And they're so distinct, their styles. And it's so much fun to see the variation, but also I just love them taking ownership of the book, because they're just like 90% of the book is them. Like, you open that book, and if it looks good, you're going to keep reading. If you don't, you're going to close the book. And I'm very, very lucky, because, you know, I have a very low opinion of my stories. I have a very high opinion of their art. So it's been great to kind of like, suckers, you know, stay with me forever.
Jeremy, you have writing credits on several DC animated features like Justice League Warworld, Justice Society World War II, and Batman Superman Battle of the Super Sons. Is there anything in the works right now in the animation department?
I can't tell you that.
Oh,
Top secret. Okay.
Okay, that's good to know, though. I like that.
What are you trying to get me killed?
Well, that means something. That means
meant
something
right there. That's a soft yes. We can move on.
In the DC field, yes, potentially. I just finished up a show for Lego, which was cool, but none of that stuff's been announced.
Awesome.
Okay. It was announced in 2025 you'll be writing Aquaman. Can you tell us how you got that assignment?
I had done a Brave and the Bold mini, I think it was like a 10-pager. Again, I'm the Mikey likes it of, you know, comic books. If they ask me to do it, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And which I should probably slow down on, because I realize I need more than 10 pages, you know. But they wanted, I think because maybe I had written a Young Justice episode with my friend Jim, for Greg Weisman, that they wanted me to do not Aqualad. He's not Aqualad anymore, but he's Aquaman, but Jackson Hyde and Miss Martian. It was funny because the first version I sent in was very much like everything in Young Justice happened. You know, I didn't say it, but I hinted at it. So I did that. And while I did that, I had brought into play this thing that I've done in Flashpoint Beyond and I've done in The Flash, which I had this kind of MacGuffin device that's this pearl that has some connection to water. And it was, you know, Aquaman had it in the Flashpoint Beyond. What do we call him? It's like the Mad Max Barry in The Search for Barry Allen had it in The Flash. And then right now, Jackson and Miss Martian find this pearl. And I had this idea from it, and I pitched it to the editors, and they said, you shouldn't do that for this. They're like, it's too big of an idea. You should try to pitch an Aquaman thing. I'm like, oh, okay. I'll pitch an Aquaman thing. So I texted my editor, Paul, and I said, hey, if you ever want to pitch for Aquaman, let me know. And he goes, oh my gosh, you're psychic. I've been thinking about you for Aquaman. I said, oh, okay. So we had a conversation. I kind of told him what I wanted to do, and I wrote it up, and people got really excited about it. I didn't know that they hadn't had an Aquaman book for a while. And especially, you know, something that was specific to Arthur Curry. And so I wrote it, and John Sims is on it, and, you know, I don't know if anybody will like it. You know, it's the same thing with Green Lantern. I'm like, I don't know, maybe, I hope, you know, and I think I'm taking some swings with it a little bit. It's not, I see a lot of people talking about it and talking around it and asking questions about who's in it and whatever. And like, no one's right. So I'm like, uh-oh. It's either an uh-oh or people will be like, hey, this is great, you know, because I'm like, well, it's not anything anybody's mentioned yet. So good luck me, you know. It's hard, you know.
I want to go back to the animation real quick, because you've been involved with DC animation in a lot of different capacities, and I think DC kind of sets the standard with the direct to the consumer, you know, animated films, full feature films, short stuff like that. I even argue with the cartoons as well. The television shows, Teen Titan Go is probably pound for pound the best IP DC has, because it's been going for a long time. But if it was up to you, like, you know, since Bruce Timm kind of started like the movie thing, like in the mid 2000s, what would you say, from your opinion, is like two of the most influential DC animated movies that come out?
I mean, Mask of the Phantasm obviously is a big fat one. If we're just talking movies, oh gosh, So here's the thing. Okay. There's too many. But my friend did one. Like I was thinking under the Red Hood one is really great.
That Brandon, one's sick.
Yeah, Brandon Beatty did that. Jensen Ackles is Jason in that. I like those a lot. So at the time I started at Warner Animation, we were doing Justice League Action. I started doing Lego stuff, so I didn't have a chance to do any of the movie things. And but I remember Eric Frasco wrote Justice League Fatal 5, and the Fatal 5, and that's with Bruce Timm, and I think that movie is so dang good. I really do. It's very emotional. It's very poignant, and I felt among our peer group, I was like, crap, we just raised the bar a great deal. And the dirty little secret between all of us is we're wildly competitive. And, and I didn't get to my chance to work in the kind of like, I've been doing a bunch of Lego DC movies, but up until Super Sons, and then obviously Batman Soul of the Dragon was the big one for me, and the Mortal Kombat stuff. But in the superhero stuff, Batman Soul of the Dragon and Battle of the Super Sons were much more. With JSA World War II, I co-wrote that with my friend Megan, so I only wrote like half of that. And then with the War World, I only got to write like a tiny snippet, like the Warlord in Kataris scene. So, I mean, the stuff has been very limited, but I've always been intimidated by the Fatal 5, which I think is so good. And then, obviously, my mentor Jim had done the Flashpoint adaptation, but he was actively mentoring me at that time, so I kind of knew what that process was going on.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff he did with Gotham by Gaslight and stuff, so I was kind of more, but like as a viewer, I really wasn't privy to the Fatal 5. I wasn't privy to Mask of Phantasm. Alan Burnett was one of the writers on that, and he's a legend.
Right.
And we had become friends, and he was kind of a mentor, which was really fun. And a lot of those, that's when I started diving into more of those animated movies. And Brandon, like I said, the Under the Red Hood is stellar. It's a stellar one.
Yeah, to me, DC sets the standards with those movies. I mean, I remember I was at the Comic-Con panel where they announced where Bruce Timm announced they were going to be doing this stuff. With Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, and all of that stuff, like the OG ones. But I remember seeing at San Diego Under the Red Hood, where they made the first screening of it, and they were showing the footage of Batman's cowl, from the Batcave. I was like, this is insane right here. I was loving it.
And if people knew how like little money they're allowed to use, I mean, like just like nothing. Like it is the most bare minimum that they spend on these things. But what's so cool about it is that they really do give a lot of creative freedom, and the artists and the storyboard guys, the directors and consulting producers, and they're so intent about trying to make it the best they can with very limited resources. But like the advantage of limited resources is they don't meddle as much. So I feel like that's why you get such awesome character-driven, really, really cool things. Like they're not going to look like Into the Spider-Verse because you don't have millions of dollars to blow on these things like those guys do. They're very almost indie filmmakery, which is hysterical.
That's crazy. All right, Jeremy, last question here. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you want your fans to know about? Any upcoming projects that you want to expound upon? Any appearances? The table's yours.
The next time anybody at a convention will see me, I'm going to be at Arsenal Comics here pretty quick for an anniversary in December, and then I'm going to New Orleans in January for a fan expo. That's all I know on that front. As far as projects, man, it's still going to be Flash Gordon. It's going to be Aquaman, Green Lantern Corps. Like that's not enough. So I mean, that's really where I'm at, and I keep plugging away on some of my own personal projects that someday I'll put out there. But until then, there's a little golden handcuffs happening. Like if they're gonna let me keep writing these, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll keep doing them.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us, man. You always have a home here on the Six Layer Station. So thank you so much. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Six Layers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Jeremy Adams. We are out. Peace.
Six Layers.